Have you ever stared into the abyss and felt it staring back? That's exactly how I felt on the night I was called to the most disturbing scene of my career. It was a stormy night in September when I received a call about a body found by a truck driver on a deserted road, miles away from the city. Nothing could have prepared me for what I was about to see. Upon arrival, I found a man lying in the mud, his eyes wide open, as if he had seen something terrifying before he died. His face was frozen in an expression of absolute terror, captured in time. There were no signs of physical violence or struggle. He had no identification, no wallet, no personal belongings. He was, for all intents and purposes, a faceless man, a nameless victim. The autopsy was inconclusive, no signs of trauma, poisoning, or known illnesses. It was as if the man had simply died from fear. As we tried to identify him, strange stories began to emerge from the nearby town. Locals spoke of a mysterious figure that appeared on dark nights, a faceless presence that instilled fear in those who saw it. They claimed this figure caused an inexplicable chill, a sensation of terror that froze one's soul. These stories were met with skepticism at the station, but the reports kept coming. People spoke of strange dreams where they saw the faceless figure. They would wake up sweating, feeling that something terrible was about to happen. I decided to investigate further, even though these legends seemed like mere superstitions. One night, while working late at the station, I felt a presence behind me. I turned quickly, but there was no one there. However, the air was cold, as if a chill had passed through. That feeling lingered, and I began to sense that something was wrong. That same night, I had a dream, or perhaps it was something more. In the dream, I was on the same road where the body had been found. The rain was pouring, and the darkness was absolute. I walked along the road until I saw a figure in the distance. It was tall, thin, and dressed in black, but had no face. A consuming fear took over me as the figure approached. I tried to move, but I was frozen in place. The figure turned towards me, and I felt as if my entire life was being drained. I woke up with a scream, my face covered in cold sweat. Since then, that feeling of being watched has never left me. The case of the Faceless Man remains an unsolved mystery. The identity of the victim was never discovered, and reports of the faceless figure continue to circulate in the town. Some believe it is a supernatural entity, a harbinger of death. Others think it is the manifestation of some deep, collective trauma. As an investigator and a skeptic by nature, I cannot deny what I felt that night. Something beyond our understanding roams that road. Now, every time the wind blows cold and the shadows lengthen, I remember that frozen expression of terror and feel a shiver down my spine. The mystery persists, a dark reminder that there are forces in this world that surpass our comprehension, and that sometimes the real terror lies in what we cannot explain.
I'm a rideshare driver, and something really strange happened to me one night. It was one of those cold, rainy nights with hardly any traffic in the city. I got a request to pick up a passenger in a somewhat remote area. Normally, I would have hesitated, but since it was a long ride and paid well, I decided to take it. When I arrived, I saw a man standing by the side of the road. He was completely soaked, wearing an old-fashioned suit that looked like it was from a movie. He got into the car without saying a word and just stared out the window. I asked him where he wanted to go, and in a low, raspy voice, he said he wanted to go to the cemetery, which wasn't too far away. I knew where it was, so I started driving without thinking much about it. Midway through the ride, the passenger started to speak, but his words were almost inaudible, mixed with the sound of rain hitting the car. At first, I thought he was talking to me and asked, "Excuse me, what did you say?" He didn't respond, just kept staring blankly out the window, as if he hadn't heard me. His eyes seemed glazed over, lost in some distant place in the darkness outside. It felt odd, but I decided not to push it. A few minutes later, he started mumbling again, his words even softer and more indistinct. It was like he was talking to himself, trapped in some kind of trance. I tried to make out what he was saying, but all I could catch were disjointed fragments. He mentioned a rainy night and something about couldn't avoid it. There was a note of despair in his voice, like he was trying to convince himself of something. I felt tense, trying not to show how uncomfortable I was. The atmosphere in the car grew heavy. Even though his words were disconnected, they seemed to carry a dark weight. I wondered if he was going through some kind of crisis, or if he was just a disturbed person. He said something about blood and screams, but none of it made much sense. The way he spoke, like he was stuck in some horrific moment in time, sent chills down my spine. It felt like he was reliving something terrible, caught in a loop of guilt and incoherent justifications. When we arrived, he got out and walked toward the cemetery. Relieved that it was over, I glanced at the back seat and saw a newspaper I had left there earlier. It was folded open to a story about a recent murder of a woman. The headline read, "Man accused of killing wife shot by police." Below it was a photo of the man who had just left my car. I was shocked to realize that he had been killed by the police the day before. I sped away as fast as I could.
When I was a child, around 6 years old, I had 2 experiences that still send shivers down my spine. On 2 consecutive nights, I woke up in the middle of the night with a suffocating sensation of weight on my chest. It was as if something invisible was pressing me down into the bed, and my muscles simply wouldn't respond. My eyes were the only thing I could move, and they darted around the dark room, searching for an explanation for the paralysis. That's when, in the faint light from the hallway, I saw something that terrified me. Sitting in the chair at the foot of my bed was an old man. He wore an old-fashioned black suit and had a serene expression on his face, but his eyes were filled with deep sadness. His presence was both peaceful and unsettling. Despite his calm demeanor, there was something profoundly disturbing about him. I wanted to scream, but my voice was trapped, panic rising within me. It was like being stuck in a nightmare from which I couldn't escape. The silence in the room was oppressive, amplifying my fear. The fear became overwhelming, and tears started streaming down my face. It was a mix of terror and helplessness. I knew that what was happening was not normal, but I couldn't do anything but silently cry. My sobs soon became audible, and that's when my mother, worried, rushed into the room. She turned on the light, and instantly, the paralysis broke. I looked around, confused and frightened, but there was no one else there. My mother hugged me, trying to calm me down as I explained, between sobs, about the man I had seen. She, in a comforting tone, told me it was just a nightmare and stayed with me until I fell back asleep. The next night, the episode repeated itself. Again, I woke up with the same paralyzing sensation, and to my horror, there was the old man once more, sitting in the chair. His appearance was identical to the previous night. The same suit, the same serene expression, and those sad eyes. The fear was even more intense because now I knew what to expect, yet I was completely powerless. I started crying again, and once more, my mother came to my aid. When she entered the room, the man disappeared just like before, leaving only the lingering fear that stayed with me for a long time. Those 2 nights were the only times I saw the man in my nightmares. As time passed, these memories became just strange stories from my childhood that I preferred to forget. Until, many years later, something brought it all back in a way I never expected. After my grandmother passed away, the family gathered at her house for the funeral. The house was filled with relatives and friends, and as I walked through the living room, I came across a table covered with old photos. Among them, one photo caught my attention. It was an old, yellowed picture showing my grandmother as a young woman, standing next to an elderly man. My heart raced as I recognized that face. It was the same man from my childhood nightmares, wearing the same black suit and the same serene expression. Shaken, I asked my mother about the man in the photo. She explained that he was my grandmother's father, my great-grandfather, who had passed away many years before I was born. The revelation left me stunned. How could I have dreamed of someone I had never known and whose image I had never seen before that moment? This discovery left me perplexed and uneasy. I never found an explanation for how or why I saw that man in my nightmares. It was as if there was an unexplainable connection between us, something that transcended logic and understanding. To this day, I have no answers, only an unsettling certainty that some things are beyond our comprehension. In all my years of service, I have never encountered a case as disturbing as that of Michael Chen. It was January 2015 when I received the call that would start an investigation that defies logical understanding to this day. Michael, a young programmer of Chinese descent, had recently moved into an old apartment building in Los Angeles known as the Sterling Building. The building, with its imposing Art Deco facade, had a long history of inexplicable events and strange reports from residents. When his family reported him missing, it was clear that this would not be an ordinary case. The mystery began to unfold when we reviewed the building's security footage. The recordings captured Michael acting peculiarly. He wandered through the hallways of the building at odd hours, looking around as if he was being followed or watched. At times he stopped in front of doors and windows, speaking to someone or something not visible in the footage. His expression shifted between perplexity and fear, as if interacting with a presence unseen by others. These images, later released to the public, sparked numerous speculations and theories about what might have happened. 2 weeks after his disappearance, Michael's body was found in an old boiler room in the basement of the Sterling Building, a place that had been out of use for decades. The door to the room was locked and appeared not to have been opened for many years. The discovery of Michael's body raised countless questions. How did he gain access to an area supposedly off limits? And why did he end up there, in such a secluded and eerie location? The autopsy revealed that the cause of death was sudden cardiac arrest, with no signs of violence or the presence of toxic substances in his system. The circumstances of Michael's death remained shrouded in mystery. He was known for being healthy and had no history of heart issues. What could have caused such a drastic reaction? During the investigation, my curiosity turned into an obsession to understand what really happened. Examining the Sterling Building felt like delving into a dark history. The building had a palpable energy, a sense of being a place where time had stopped. Some long-term residents reported feeling strange presences in the hallways and hearing whispers from the dark corners of the building. Others recalled old stories about the place, mentioning inexplicable events and the constant feeling of being watched. I decided to spend a night in the building, hoping to capture anything that might explain Michael's fate. As I walked through the silent hallways, the oppressive atmosphere seemed to intensify. The walls, adorned with faded Art Deco details, seemed to hold untold secrets. Every sound, from the creaking floorboards to the faint hum of the lights, felt amplified, as if the building itself were alive. I descended to the basement where Michael was found. The old boiler room was a somber place, with rusted walls and a damp floor. As I entered, I was met with an inexplicable coldness that seemed to penetrate to the bone. The lights flickered, casting unsettling shadows on the walls. I moved cautiously through the room, feeling an oppressive presence around me, as if something was lurking, unseen. As I explored, I noticed strange markings on the walls, symbols I couldn't identify, as if someone had etched them long ago. When I touched one of the symbols, I felt a sudden wave of panic and a growing pressure in my chest. It was as if the room itself was trying to repel me, to keep me away from some deep, dangerous secret. With my heart racing, I decided I had seen enough. I left the building with a sense that I had only scratched the surface of something much darker and more complex. The case of Michael Chen was officially closed as an inexplicable accident, but I could never accept that conclusion. The disturbing footage, the enigmatic circumstances, and the oppressive atmosphere of the Sterling Building left an indelible mark on me. To this day, I wonder if forces beyond our understanding were at play. And as the world continues to move forward, the Sterling Building remains an enigma, a place where the real and the supernatural seem to intertwine in a most unsettling way.
You've just ventured into the shadows of the unknown. If you enjoyed this terrifying journey, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, Whispers from the Abyss, Tales of Terror. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a dark tale. We want to hear your theories and fears in the comments below. Leave a like if this story sent chills down your spine. Join us and become part of this brave community that faces terror head on. Until the next cold, dark night.